Hello, I am still at my grandparents' place in New York, and I did a little bit of book shopping yesterday. And yesterday, it was new books at Barnes& and Noble. Whenever I'm in the States, I do like to stop in at the Barnes& and Noble, even though it's almost identical to our Chapters chain up in Canada. Barnes& and Noble tends to have a few different books. The selection is slightly different, and I do like to stop off there. Then today I went to an antique market that has lots of books, and a place called the Book Vault over in Endicott, New York, that I like to visit every year. I'm going to start off with the new books that I bought yesterday at the Barnes & Noble. I did share them on Twitter, so if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen those. But I picked up the poetry of Pablo Neruda. Now, this isn't a complete collection of his. I read the editor's note, or the foreword or whatever, already, and it is a representation of his work. The editor, Ilian Stevens, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, went through Neruda's works, went through available English translations, and compiled this collection with pieces from his writings throughout his life. And it's a brick of a book, so it should keep me going. If you've been watching my channel lately, you'll notice that I've read and reviewed a couple collections of Neruda's poetry. I've been enjoying him, and so this was kind of the jackpot to come across that. I also ended up picking up The Razor's Edge by W. Somerset. I won't even try to pronounce that. But anyway, The Razor's Edge. I don't know too much about the novel itself, but when I was a teenager, I remember one evening turning on the TV late at night and catching a bit of the movie that I'm assuming was made somewhere between the 50s and the 60s, I'm going to guess. I remember really enjoying what I saw of the movie, and when I saw the book, I picked it up because I think it will be interesting. It's about a young man from upper class society who kind of leaves all that behind, and I think he ends up traveling a bit, and he wants to build a life for himself with his own hands or something like that. Should be an interesting read. And then I picked up some Sylvia Plath, her collection Ariel. I've been wanting to get into some of Plath's poetry, and so of course I picked this up. So those are the three that I got at the Barnes & Noble. My grandparents and I went out for dinner at a Chinese restaurant, and there was a Dollar Tree next door. My grandmother wanted to pick out a birthday card for someone, I think. And so we went in and I browsed the books, and I came away with The 16th of June by Maya Lang. The title is apparently taken from James Joyce's novel. This could be a completely awful novel. It could be good. I'm always wary when I find books in dollar stores, because that usually means that they didn't sell at the previous location, and so they're being basically given away. But it could be an interesting read, it could not. And then on to today's books. So I went to the Book Vault in Endicott, which is a nice used bookstore. It's in an older shop location. They actually have a big old vault in the corner. There was a cat that was lying across the counter when I went to check out. They have some popular fiction. They have a section of classics. They have a lot of history, a lot of biography, if that's what you're looking for. I almost bought a biography of James Cagney, but then I put it back because I wanted to save some of my money for the next place I was going to. But I came away from there with two books. One of them being Charmed Circle, Gertrude Stein and Company by James R. Mello. It was in the biography section. I'll just read the back. Through the Paris salon of Gertrude Stein, past the luminous talents of an era, Picasso, Hemingway, Matisse, Fitzgerald, one I can't pronounce. Anyway, with her devoted friend Alice B. Tokes, Gertrude Stein presided over a table heavy with good food and alive with sparkling conversation. In Charmed Circle, James R. Mello has recreated this glorious milieu and the fascinating women who dominated it. His compelling narrative is rich with insight into both Stein's celebrated career as a writer and her enduring relationship with Alice B. Tokes. Spanning the years from 1903, when she first came to Paris, to her last days at the close of the World War, Charmed Circle is a penetrating and lively picture of this literary giant and her exciting world. I know absolutely nothing about Gertrude Stein, but her name is familiar to me, and of course many of the authors listed on the back are familiar to me, the artists as well. I like a good novel, a good memoir, a good biography set in Paris. So I'm hoping this will be a worthwhile read. And how much did I pay for this? $3.95 plus tax. I also picked up Sylvia Plath, the collected poems at that bookstore. This one cost me $12.95. I actually almost bought a collection of Sylvia Plath's poems, a larger one than Ariel, at the Barnes & Noble yesterday, but I decided to hold off because that was going to cost me $25, and I'm happy with what I got here. And then I went to an antique market. I did pull out my phone a couple times to take some video footage, take some pictures, just to show you what it's like inside. It is 3 floors. Top one is mainly furniture and clothing. Sometimes there's a few books scattered throughout. The middle one is kind of a mixture of a bunch of different things, but the basement is where I like to go because that's where the books are. It's kind of cubby holes for different vendors. I found a few good books for $1 each. I found Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass. This is a Signet classic. I've only read a little bit of Whitman, but I figured for $1, this is kind of a pretty little edition. I do like these old Signet editions. Then I picked up something called The Red Leather Diary, Reclaiming a Life Through the Pages of a Lost Journal by Lily Copel. This is one that I had never heard of, but the cover and the fact that it's a Harper Perennial edition caught my eye, and the back intrigued me. For more than half a century, the Red Leather Diary languished inside a steamer trunk. Rescued from a dumpster on Manhattan's Upper West Side, it found its way to Lily Copel, a young writer who opened its tarnished brass lock and journeyed into an enthralling past. The diary painted a breathtaking portrait of a bygone New York, of glamorous nights at El Morocco and elegant teas at Schraff's during the 1920s and 30s, and of the headstrong and enduring teenager who filled its pages with her hopes, heartaches, and vivid recollections. Intrigued, Copel followed her only clue, a frontispiece inscription to its now 90-year-old owner, Florence Wolfson, and was enchanted as Florence, reunited with her diary, rediscovered a lost younger self, burning with artistic fervor. Joining intimate interviews with original diary entries, the Red Leather Diary recreates the romance and promise of a remarkable era and brings to life the true story of a daring, precocious young dreamer. I was intrigued very much by this, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. At least I hope I will. Then I picked up a play, once again by an author I had not heard of. It's called The Mob by John Galsworthy. And this one also cost me $1. And the publication date in here is June 1914, published by Scribner Sons in New York. It's a play in 4 acts. I know absolutely nothing about it, but with a title like The Mob, it's got to be interesting. And just the fact that it was from 1914 and it fits nicely in the hand and it smells good. Then I found a book about Clark Gable. I like Clark Gable's movies. Gone with the Wind, one of the best films ever made. It Happened One Night, also very good. This is a Pictorial Treasury. It seems to be part of a series published by Galahad Books in New York City. 1973. And I think what it's going to do is go over all the films he was in. There's lots of pictures in it, which is nice. So that's what I got at the antique market. But then we were passing by a Goodwill, and Goodwills have books, so we stopped, and I'm glad we did. All of these were 99 cents each. I think one of them was actually half price, but I found T.S. Eliot selected poems, including The Wasteland, The Hollow Men, and Ash Wednesday. Nice little yellow edition. Found a Judy Blume book. I haven't read Judy Blume since I was a teenager, but this is Forever, a moving story of the end of innocence by a best-selling novelist. And there were a couple of H.G. Wells there. I haven't read any H.G. Wells, but I do like nice short books lately, and these are short, so I'll give them a try. The Invisible Man and The Time Machine. And finally, I came across kind of a quirky read, I guess. Guerrilla Warfare, Che Guevara, introduction by Mark Becker. This is a collection of essays by Che Guevara on guerrilla warfare. And this was originally published sometime in the 60s, I think. I didn't even know it existed, but for 99 cents, it could be an interesting read. Oh, and then I should mention this as well. It's not a book, but at that antique market, they have a lot of vintage jewelry, and you can probably tell based on what I wear a lot. I do like vintage jewelry. This is one of my favorite pieces here, bought at an antique market in Canada. But today I found this necklace. It has an interesting clasp. I've never seen a clasp like this before. I'm guessing it's probably 1970s or earlier based on the clasp, but I don't know if this is going to focus. But basically when you push this, it comes up, and then when you put it back in, it clicks back in place. It seems to be a variation of a box clasp, but anyway, there's these nice jeweled bits and pearls. I love pearls. Anything vintage with decent looking pearls, I will probably be tempted to buy. But I'm looking forward to wearing that. It'll go with a lot of my outfits. But yeah, so those are the books I got. And I am going to go and read and enjoy the rest of my vacation.